It's a couple of things. One is that everyone who isn't already doing the research and the work, you want to be able to study and genuinely understand the foundation of this country. You want to embody it as real knowledge first. Like this is an anti-black, anti-indigenous colonial nation. Now, once you do that, do the research, do the studying, tons of resources online, do your reading, do your research. The second step is it's a false dichotomy between standards and teaching a racial justice curriculum. It's a false dichotomy. You can still teach content that is racial justice based and in fact probably produce the standards quick like faster if not better. If you had our young people reading the history of genocide here, I'm pretty sure they'd be like, oh man, that's crazy, could I read some more? Because you know what I mean, like that's kind of, that would entice me. Right. If you had our young people reading some of these like really exciting texts about resisting slavery, resisting colonization. Like, I think I would, is maybe idealistic, but I'm sure our young people would be more inclined, would be excited to learn this kind of history, especially in this moment.
I taught history for years, and students always would say whenever we were talking about, for example, like the Filipino American War or about even like the war in Syria, things that are going on right now, the class was consistently seen as like, wow, this is like the coolest class ever, even though it's hyper depressing. And everything we talk about is so sad and morbid, really, because sadly, United States history is steeped in. There's very few points in United States history where you can go like, oh yeah, they were a good person. It's always either a shade of gray or something nefarious is going on behind the scenes, and you're like, oh, this is why we're at the way that we are today. But students get hyped up about that kind of thing. They discuss those things. They talk about those things, especially if you have basically the conversation that we're having right now with students, talking about the school system and how it basically treats them, because they're living that. And in my opinion, it's really important that students understand the system that they're in so that they can then transform and lead some change, and even things like protest and demand change from the inside.
I love that, right? So I love that we're studying the history. We're teaching the history. So those are two steps, right? We study it, we teach it, infuse it in our curriculum. I think it's also, you're saying that it inspires young people to be critical thinkers and to act upon that, right? So we change our curriculum to include more racial justice centered content. And then the other part to that, if you can, if your subject matter doesn't allow for that, you also teach kind of, you diversify the content. I have a school teacher that I know and care about in my family who's a third, fourth grade teacher. He's teaching Christopher Columbus, right, as he's been told he has to teach. And then he teaches his students, like, so who were the originators of this country, right? Who originally are the stewards? And the young people, the students will say the natives, right? So he teaches them, like, here's what I'm supposed to teach you. I've taught it to you. Now here's another set of history. So I want you to compare and you tell us, you get to decide. You can also teach them other vantage points if you're not going to center it, right? Because you feel constricted, even though I think you have the freedom to change it, but nonetheless.